The Business of Agriculture is brought to you by Land Trust. Have you heard how landowners are increasing profitability by adding recreation to their portfolio of land use? Millions of outdoor recreators seek wide open spaces for birdwatching, photography, hunting, fishing, horseback riding, and many other farm and ranch activities. Landowners are partnering with the Recreation Access Network, Land Trust. Land Trust is an online platform connecting recreators with landowners for outdoor experiences on their land to increase profitability. Visit landtrust.com/BOA, as in Business of Agriculture, to learn more. That's landtrust.com/BOA.
Well, greetings and welcome to another fantastic episode of the Business of Agriculture. It's me, your host, Damian Mason, but you already knew that because you heard that in the introduction. This episode, as so many before it, brought to you by my good friends at Land Trust. You know, they're capitalizing on this thing that you have. If you have agricultural land that's not really agriculturally productive, it's like woods, it's streams, it's ponds, it's a cabin. Why don't you use Land Trust and turn that into money? It's like the Airbnb concept. You don't have to do it for a long-term lease. You can just say, hey, someone comes to home and uses this, you turn it into money and use that for your fun time. You know what? That's what Land Trust does. Help you capitalize on an asset that you have that you're not fully appreciating. Speaking of fully appreciating, I fully appreciate my guest. His name is Jarod Creed. Jarod does work with our good friend, Kelly Garrett. Kelly Garrett has been on this podcast, as you probably remember. He's also a founding member of Extreme Ag. I'm working with the boys over at Extreme Ag, producing content and telling everybody about the product trials and all the great business and farming lessons that they can teach you over at extremeag.farm. Well, Jarod Creed works with Kelly Garrett in Iowa. He is the proprietor of JC Marketing Services and JC Ag Financial. Jarod Creed is essentially the guy that tries to tie together insurance, marketing, and the CFO role of farming operations. And I talked to him at a conference I spoke at in January, and I said, you know, I hear good things about you. I think I'd like you to come on and tell me what you do, what sets you apart, why your service is needed, and the things that you see out here. You know, farming is a business. All this stuff, as you well know, dear Business of Agriculture listener, it ain't American Gothic. It ain't Norman Rockwell. It's a business. And so we're going to talk about the business side, and especially now in these topsy-turvy, tumultuous times that we've now seen with the Ukraine invasion by Russia. Global markets are going crazy. What do you do? How do you keep your sanity? Jarod's going to answer all that stuff and more. Welcome to the Business of Agriculture podcast, Mr. Jarod Creed.
Damian, I appreciate the invite.
Well, and I said a little bit about setting you up. What did I miss? Background, you're an Iowa guy, or you're at least an Iowa resident now. Give me a little bit about your background and then what JC Marketing Services and JC Ag Financial does.
I was born and raised down by Wichita, Kansas, moved to Iowa in 2013 after working in the ag industry in central Kansas for about a decade prior. Met my wife over in Denison, Iowa. We lived in the Omaha area. She worked for GPRE. I worked for Gavilon. Once we decided to have our first child, we wanted to get back around her family in Northeast Iowa. So now we live in Hudson, which is right outside of Waterloo, Cedar Falls. She's a stay-at-home mom, started our own gig in 2017. We work with not quite 50 farms throughout the Midwest that amass around 200,000 acres, primarily west of the Mississippi, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota. We catch the overwhelming majority. Then we also do some consulting for a few different banks, a few different other large co-ops. And some random presentations throughout the year as well, different seed meetings and fertilizer meetings. JC Marketing was the first business. We actually launched JC Ag Financial about 18 months ago. Quite frankly, I wish we launched JC Ag Financial first, kind of in an idea of keeping the horse in front of the cart. I found over the last couple of years that the importance of having a crystal clear understanding of one's financial scenario is a heck of a lot more important than, much more imperative when you're making marketing decisions, I should say. We went all those years on the JC marketing side, ultimately making probably some silly assumptions on what our real true costs were. We might discuss the cost production a time or two a year and then park it and forget about it. Now in the JC Ag Financial business, have staff that prior to working for JCI Financial, worked with Farm Credit. We leveraged two different software platforms called Zero and Figured. You mentioned kind of the CFO role for a farm. Not many operations like to take care of their bookwork on a timely basis. And oftentimes, whatever bookwork does take place on a farm is typically looking at yesterday's numbers or 30, 60, 90 days ago numbers. Instead, we're always constantly looking forward, trying to have as clear of a vision of what the financial outcome looks to be of the farm on making X, Y decisions, whether it's purchasing land, paying X amount of rent, buying a tractor, crop rotations based upon what marketing opportunities are there, and then tracking that as the growing season goes on or until that crop year actually, finishes. And in a tumultuous environment that we've been in the last 18 months of inflation, it's been critical. It's no secret that our cost of production has screamed higher recently, but now being able to take several years worth of real raw data from any financial account that a farm uses, whether it be a checking account, savings account, line of credit, credit card, you name it. Every transaction that transpires on the farm is reconciled down to a farm level, operational level, entity level, you name it. And then we're able to start talking about the marketing needs. On the marketing services side it's pretty black and white, Damian. Completely focused on profitability. We don't like the speculation game. Farmers do love to speculate, so there ends up still being a little bit of that here and there. But we try to bring all of the real information together to almost be a board of advisors for a farm, perhaps.
Okay, I want to stop you because there's a bunch of things, and if I don't get you stopped, I'm jotting down as quick as my fingers can work. But a couple of things, just because I think let's go back to the beginning there. You worked in corporate before you got and started this thing. Your role when you were in corporate, you rattled off a couple of company names between you and your wife, and I didn't get to write those down. What was before you started this, the role you had was essentially being a marketing advisor to farming operations, correct?
I was a marketing advisor in Kansas for a co-op called Mid-Kansas Co-op and Team Marketing Alliance. Everything I know today, I'm still very thankful I had the opportunity to work with them, and have built on it since. When I moved to Iowa, I worked for the Andersons at an ethanol plant in Denison, Iowa, and then had an opportunity to go work in Omaha at Gavilon, more or less providing farm risk management services to 150 different elevators in a Gavilon network, kind of in charge of North American grain origination, I guess you'd say. Okay. And from there, like I mentioned, in 2017, had our first child. Wife wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I knew I was going to travel a little bit, starting my own gig. And it's nice to be right around her family here before I'm gone.
Absolutely. So all makes sense. I just want to make sure I got that. So the background, obviously you came out of school and were a grain marketing, commodities marketing guy. That was kind of what your specialty is. But then you had a few other roles there when you were serving the company Gavilon and risk management beyond just the marketing of commodities, right?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Damian, that in 2007-ish, I had no clue that I was going to be in the ag industry. I actually got out of college and went straight to the Air Force. Went to base training and tech school, was stationed out of Wichita and Topeka, Kansas for a period of time. And next thing I knew, I'd go talk with my brother in the town that the co-op is in. And here I am today. So it's been a wild ride.
That is a wild ride. Not even from a farm background?
I grew up in a service station, actually, in Sumner County, Kansas, prior wheat capital of the world. I grew up working on farm equipment, truck tires, split rim tires. I'm sure a bunch of your listeners will laugh at that. I've had plenty of my share of split rim tires blowing up on me, and that was kind of Dad's message that you're not going to stay in this business long term.
I like it. Okay, so you've got this thing that you're saying, hey, we're a little different. I can buy crop insurance on the internet. I can make a phone call, and I've worked for crop insurance organizations speaking at their conferences, and I'm in no way bashing on crop insurance, just that it's a commodity. It's everywhere. It's all the same price. So there's that part. And then also, and take this the right way, I have been on the ag speaking circuit long enough at every meeting you can imagine There's a lot of folks that are out here saying, hey, I'll be your grain marketing advisor. I'll be your commodity marketing advisor. There's a bunch of them. And again, it's a service that is needed, but it's kind of like insurance agents and grain marketing people are on every corner. What's different about you? You sort of bridge the gap between all of them, but then you say CFO role. And
there's a tremendous amount of powerful resources in the industry, whether that be at the banking level, the accountant level, crop insurance agent, marketing, brokers, you name it. One of the things that I suppose I'm most proud about is our relationship with the farmer is we have no incentive making decisions on their behalf. As in, we're not a broker, we're not a crop insurance agent. I'm very in tune in the brokerage world, have plenty of history within the commercial world of trading speculatively. I've ran an insurance agency, oftentimes, maybe, I guess I'll just say it. Unfortunately, Damian, I do find myself educating producers, insurance agents more often than not. And our role on the farm is to bring all of these variables together for the farmer instead of having him have to wear 12 different hats. We cut it down in half or less.
Yeah. So what you just said there, you're not a broker. I remember, you read about finances, even at a consumer level. Should the person advising you on your finances also be the person that's selling you your investments? That's the argument that a fee-based financial advisor would tell you. Like, you just pay me a fee per year and I'm going to help you get rich, but you're not going to be paying me a commission to sell you stuff. That's probably a kind of a pitch you have. I'm not selling you on my services to broker your stuff. I don't make a commission by liquidating your grain, and I don't make money off of selling you an insurance policy. That's part of the pitch of JC Marketing and Financial.
That would be a true vision of the company, but I like to tell people we don't have a pitch. The proud piece that the thing that I'm most proud about, we don't advertise, we don't cold call. 100% of our business, and I mean it, 100% is from referrals, and that makes life a lot easier. You get to work with.
Would you just let me give you accolades right there? Because you said 100% of our business from referrals. What you didn't say is it's all word of mouth, because in that book right over my shoulder right there, the Do Business Better book, I put a segment in there that word of mouth is bullshit. That would imply to the average yahoo that's never run their own business that you just woke up and everybody word of mouth you into success. It's called word of, I've earned my reputation by doing right by my clients and my customers. And because I've done a great job for them, now other people trust me based on their recommendation to come and do business with me. That's why I do not like the word of mouth. I love the fact that referral and reputation is really what you're talking about. So I appreciate that. So you don't have a pitch, but okay, you're not pitching. I appreciate that. Why then people come to you is because they're not just coming to get sold to, I guess is what I'm saying.
When a producer calls us or we call a producer, they know that we might talk about an opinion of what's taking place in the marketplace, various angles, but we're always going to relate it back to their farm, their well-being, their risk, their reward, and devise a strategy and plan from there. And it's constantly back to you. Instead of me suggesting you, Damian, hey, your investment strategy should be X, Y, Z, versus me saying, hey, we have all of these different individuals that are all mingling towards this particular investment strategy. That strategy is different for every single different individual and every different operation. There is no one size fits all. A lot of different operations have different comfort levels. And again, given the fact that I'm not in any way, shape, or form diminishing the efforts and the great people in the insurance space and the broker space, but I don't have to worry about selling something to a client to make a living. They know that when I'm talking to them, it's about their farm, their well-being.
All right. Now, again, I'm just asking these questions because I know that I preface by saying farming is a business. These people that are my neighbors out here in the suburbs of Arizona sometimes don't understand that. They think it's all, a Norman Rockwell painting, and you're just out there, hanging out with your hen house but you and I know it's a business. We talked about the CFO role. I'm more businessy than I am producery. I've got the farm boy background. Most farm people love to produce. And I get that, man. That's but they get paid by the bushel, by the pound, by the gallon, whatever that should be. Generally, they do not like to be the desk person. And some of them are horrifically bad at the money side. And they're as bad at the money side as they are good at the production side. Is that where you think that you add the most value?
There's a lot of truth to that. Maybe more than anything, being able to provide them an accurate view of the future of their financial well-being. Yeah. I'm not trying to predict the future. We're just showing them solid math, the real numbers on their operation. And a good example is in this tumultuous market that we've been in for the last couple of weeks, having that information at the fingertip to come to the producer to say, your estimate profitability today is $675,221 based upon your APH, your insurance guarantee.
Wait, alphabet set. APH means?
Actual production history, 10-year yield history. Obviously, there's a lot of wiggle room in that from the spring to the fall based upon what a final yield is for the producer. But being able to make it as simple as this is your estimate profitability in real dollars and cents. How does that make you feel? And if it makes you feel good, we ought to be doing something about it. If you don't like it, then obviously you know that you have some more work to do.
Okay. The money side of it, though, I asked you if you think that's where you bring the biggest value. I know that I know farming operations, and this is probably more old school, certainly not at your client level base, where it's almost they've succeeded in spite of themselves, because appreciation of the land asset, because they were always frugal, but it wasn't because they were brilliant about handling the business side of it. Is that a mistake that you see?
Yeah, the money piece of it right now and the here and now is trying to prepare for the what if. What if interest rates do move substantially higher over the coming 12, 24 months? How does that impact a farm? How do we stress test a farm in that type of environment? How does the farmer need to position themselves accordingly, just like a CFO would be for a multinational company or a big conglomerate in the US? They're constantly looking at the next step of how do they need to position their company for future success.
First off, I agree with all that. So, marketing of the commodities. Some farm guys, that's what they do. They're on their phone all day doing it. Some just, again, they want to produce it and they want to talk about producing it and they want to stick it in the bin. I know you'll say it varies. It's going to vary from operation. You're going to tell me that. Tell me your concept on getting the stuff sold. I'm good at producing the stuff. I'm good at producing the stuff. Now, you know what? And this would be Damian Mason. I hated Ag Econ 320. I took it. Joe Ewell, you're probably dead now, professor from Purdue 30 years ago. But you know what? I hated your class. I thought it was the most tedious thing. I have made the point. That poor man, Mr. Marlon Bowling on the rural radio, who spends 6 hours a day doing the market report, and you tune him, he says, oh gosh, very exciting. 2.5 cent move in the soybean complex. If that was my life, I would take a 9mm and put it in my mouth. I just absolutely, that's what I think when I think about commodity trading and looking at getting excited over 1.5 moves in the soybean complex. You tell me what you think about it.
Prior to 2022, we basically always went to the farm with the idea, hey, we want to make worst case $100 profit an acre.
$100 per acre, worst case. That's your goal. That's your goal.
That was the starting point. But that has transitioned a little bit in the environment we're in. But $100 an acre, what did that represent? For most farms, that represented somewhere 15 to 20% return. Now, a challenging question in any farm operation, and you too, Damian, tell me another business in the U.S. that has the ability to have a subsidized backstop from the government and go turn $1 million into $1.2 million in a 12-month span, year in, year out.
Yeah. So your assessment is that it's actually, as much as we like to be told from our farming friends, and you and I are both in this industry, you can't make any money. One thing that you just pointed out, and I've said this, first off, the answer to your question is there's none. There's very low. There's none on the front side of it. when ag people say, well, you don't even know what it's like. You don't have anything at risk. And I said, well, do you either? Because the United States Department of Agriculture, as you said, puts subsidized backstops on it and gives you premium, will help you pay for your crop insurance premium that guarantees you a break-even revenue. My business for 28 years has never had the ability where the government would guarantee me revenue. Is that what we're talking about here? That we really are farmers are in a good situation and that they can just about lock themselves into subsidized break-even just through USDA programs, right?
There's opportunities of that, but then obviously the bigger reward is obviously making more money than a break even. We don't like to focus on break even. We want worst case to be profit. Yeah. And maybe one of the ways I've explained it to people before is imagine that you're the CEO of a farm. They're all CEOs of their own farm, but you have a board of investors. Yeah. And in the here and now, you're looking at 2023 and 2022 and have an opportunity to lock in a 30% return. And it's backed by the government. And if you do not do it and things go sideways, what's that board of investors going to say? Oftentimes, outside money looks at the farming space and just, it blows their mind that you spend this amount of money to only make this amount. Mm-hmm. Well, when the opportunity presents itself, and I don't care how, when, why, that's what we jump on. Whether it's cheaper inputs, bigger yield, higher prices. I tell you what, Damian, one of my biggest pet peeves in the ag industry is the old idea of manage your risk. Bullshit. Tell me what your risk is. Uh-huh. Define your risk. Mm-hmm. What is the risk in the market? The prices that we're looking at today, the risk in the world around us is what's creating these higher prices. So the farmer's quote unquote risk today is change, and change is the only constant. So change can be good or bad. You just have to be prepared. And that gets back to this, what we do. We're constantly prepared, looking forward for what our next opportunity is. And quite frankly, in the last, I don't even know if I'm supposed to say this, Damian, when we're recording it, but, in the last couple of weeks, the opportunity that has been presented for 2022 and 2023 has been like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Yeah. January 1st, I thought 2022 is going to be an okay year. Mm-hmm. Markets have moved so substantially, it's going to be a banner year now. And I don't care what happens. High price, low price, big yield, low year. We're going to have a very good year across a 10-year history. 2023, relative to corn, it rallied $1 since January 1st. That's a tremendous lift of exposure for the farm, because in today's heightened input environment, I'm pretty sure that price has surpassed the increase on inputs. You just heard me say $200 to $300 an acre profit, 20 to 30% return opportunity on the table with a normal yield. And you still make money if you fall short because you have your insurance.
Yeah. So what you just said there is a remarkable thing that we don't like to admit, and a lot of folks in agriculture won't admit. You have an ability to do a 20% return, and you've got a backstop, as you said, that's a subsidized backstop that means that you're being prevented from losing. Frankly, you can be prevented from losing.
Even double dipping, Damian. If I position ourselves worst case to make 20% and the market falls, I still get paid for my insurance, even if I put myself in a position to succeed.
Yeah. So how the actual act of doing that, and by the way, you also you said something that I like there. You said in this industry we always have manage your risk, and you said you called bullshit on that and said, well, first off, let's define the risk, and then also the risk moves. Right now, the risk is what? That we're going to come down on these commodity prices that have gone up. Is there another risk?
Look, the biggest risk for the farm is almost more emotional than anything, mental. As I had XYZ opportunity and I didn't do something about it, and you get the deer in the headlight looks, and then everything just crumbles. The risk of complacency is the biggest risk for the farm.
The risk of complacency is the biggest risk for the farmer.
I shouldn't say the risk of complacency, but just complacency in general is the risk for the farm. When I talk about locking in a worst case profit, I'm talking worst case as in things can still get better. There are tools in the industry, from the insurance space, from the contracting space, hedge accounts, so on and so on, that you can put yourself in a incredible situation for the next 24 months. And 2021 is going to be a spectacular year financially for almost all of American ag producers. And
you're talking about the year we just completed.
Yeah. Tell me a scenario where on average a producer makes over a 25% return across a 3-year span. How many times in agriculture has that ever happened?
Yeah, and that's atypical.
Very atypical.
Yeah.
So, oftentimes there's the argument to this concept is, but what if the market does X, Y, Z? Did we catch the high on 2021 crops? Absolutely not. Are we going to catch a high in 2022? Absolutely not. But you know who handled their business in the 3-4 years prior to that are the ones who grew. And now we're in a position to make the same amount of dollars per acre on more acres, pushing their operation further in the right direction, while another operation that might have just gotten lucky in the last 18 months and lost money significantly in the years prior, they didn't have great opportunities to grow. And in fact, they might have shrunk.
You say in one of the communications we had prior to hitting the record on this recording right now, you talked about if you worked for a corporation, which you have and I have, or if you were the owner of a non-farming company, maybe you had shareholders or investors, and you talked about goals and profit margins, and you said your closing line when you were responding to one of my queries I wanted to talk about, you said ag shouldn't be any different, meaning ag as a business, which we began the podcast by saying. I point this out all the time, and one thing that I used to say in my speeches, Jarod, was that old thing, and you're probably just old enough to remember it. Did you hear about the farmer that won $2 million in the lottery? Said he's going to keep farming until he loses it all. Ha, ha, ha. Now you think, who the hell thinks that's funny, first off? Secondly, that is such a bumpkin-ass coffee shop mentality. And thirdly, what business? Would the dry cleaners be doing that? Hey, did you hear about the dry cleaner that just thinks it's going to be such a joke that he thinks it's funny? He's going to go and tell everybody how he's going broke doing what he does. Nobody would even, you'd be like, why would I think that somehow that's noble? Why is it noble that this dry cleaner is losing his shirt? Why is it noble and humorous at the same time and somehow all shucksy cool that we can talk about this? It drives me crazy because this is a business.
It's the result of complacency, like I mentioned. They look back on the opportunity that was lost, and they have to. And obviously, this is a touchy subject, Damian. You and I both, our careers are based upon agriculture. We appreciate the agriculture industry, but there is a segment of the agriculture industry that constantly has to find something to lighten the mood because of what has transgressed over the past. To take that a step further, it wasn't 24 months ago that the farm community was in dire straits if business wasn't managed appropriately, and it resulted in a loss of life. If you want to get to that level, I mean, people were.
We had that situation. Now the thing is, I've got to tell you that, and been around this my whole life, that it's also, there's a preventable aspect of that as well, in that we just talked about. My brother works for the United States Department of Agriculture, and I understand the programs. There are programs that can be taken advantage of. Do you think that it's just, honestly, we talk about managing your risk. Do you think there's a category within production agriculture that just truly wants to just produce pounds and bushels and gallons and just truly does not have any interest or any capacity for the business side of it? Because in general, it seems like you should be able to lock yourself into break even or better every year.
Yes. Simple answer is yes. In the commercial industry, we talk about the 80-20 rule quite often. 80% of the production is coming from your top 20% of producers. That is arguably now 85-15 in my mind. with what's happened over the last couple of years on growth, on business-minded, successful operations. Mm-hmm. You talk about taking on more risk. Well, this guy's just risking it all. Well, how do you know? Well, how do you know what business decisions he's making? How do you know that actually if a producer grows, you see or hear the coffee shop talk about, well, he paid X amount of dollars of rent. There's no way that's going to work. Yeah. You know what? We can show you case by case by case that a farmer is sometimes better off picking up more ground in a particular environment at a higher rent because it's spreading out the balance of his fixed overhead expenses. Mm-hmm. And if it cash flows and he's making $100 an acre or whatever that is, he's winning.
Yeah. Well, remember, Economics 101 is you produce until the very end of your last marginal cost being covered. So, that is something that is lost on some folks, meaning if you've got 4,000 acres, which it sounds like your typical consultant's farming operation does based on 200,000 acres on 50 farms. And you say, you know what, we're already maxed out on where our costs are, but you know what, we've got time and we've got equipment. We can go over here and grab and even overpay for this 400 acres, 10% more to our operation. And we can then, because of where we are, we're going to be making a little less on those acres, but we also are making money on those acres is kind of what you're saying.
I don't want to go off on a tangent to take us in completely.
I don't mind it. I kind of enjoy your tangents.
I think that's a lot of the technology treadmill as well. When we talk about the 80-20 rule, there's a segment of producers that continue to adapt to newer and newer technology, creating more and more efficiencies, creating more of the time you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And if you have the time is money. And if that high dollar piece of equipment is sitting there, not operating in the entire time frame that it should, well, it's a cost, right? It's not necessarily an opportunity cost. It's just that, and I think that continues to transpire, though. The individuals who adapted to some of the, technology 5 years ago is now in the hands of that next tier, right? And that's obviously the technology treadmill for U.S. agriculture in general.
Jarod, I like that. Let's talk a little bit about swinging up. I know that the elevator not too far from my farm in Indiana, paying what, $16 beans right now. So if you had soybeans that were uncommitted and they were sitting in your grain bin, you could have sold them for $11. I remember it was just in the spring, I think, 10 months ago. Did you hear what they're talking? Beans in the teens. It was a big deal right there. Well, hell, they not only got to the teens of 13, they're to the teens of 16. You look kind of silly if you sold $11 to $12 soybeans, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, there's always a way to look back on what you wish you did different. I think what's most important for producers in particular is it's not about the first or the last sale. It's the combination of everything.
There you go.
And it's a silly phrase, but there's still meat on the bone on it, that you always hope that your next sale is your lowest sale, right? You are a producer of that end product. You spent money to create that end product. You want things to go in your favor. Look, I would say that the move in the bean market this year is nowhere near as potentially painful as it was a year prior. Keep in mind, we were coming out of the trade war, coming out of COVID. There was a tremendous amount of beans priced between $9 to $10 out of the field, and beans went to 15, 16, 17 last summer as well. And that's a weather market, a huge piece of that driven from South America problems last year, and arguably the start of inflation. At the end of the day, back to your original question, you sell what works for your farm and you move on. Do you think Amazon gets egg on their face for a decision that satisfied investors but could have been better?
Yeah. No. Well, you know what they get? They get doubted in the pages of the Wall Street Journal by people that are, Monday morning quarterbacks. Where they totally screwed up. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I always point that out also. Well, you know what I'd do or what I'd have done. Like, well, you know what? You didn't.
It wasn't your business. Right? But you're ultimately making business decisions. And yeah, I have a lot of input and say on that. We're never going to catch the high. It's a known. And that's the producers we work with. If they're looking for marketing advice as far as direction of the market, then we're not a good fit for them. The end. If they're more interested in the day-to-day movements, kind of what you were talking about on certain individual talking on TV, stuff drives me nuts. Getting focused on day-to-day moves. It's the long term. It's working towards an end result average that ultimately results in what your overall profitability is, and moving forward in the right direction, building equity, building working capital, and reinvesting in that space if that's what you want to do long term and that's your end goal.
I got about 3 more questions for you, Jarod Creed of JC Marketing Services and JC Ag Financial, because I do think that there's some people listening to this could do some good for their business operation by looking you up. What's the what does farming operations get wrong? I mean, it could be anything. I know it's from the estate planning to the, bringing in junior, and junior's really not who should be in that role. That happens. I see that. And Julian Brown talks a lot about those kinds of things. But besides personnel or the struggle with the family relationship, let's talk about the business side of it. What do they get wrong?
Trying to avoid Uncle Sam.
Yeah. And we've talked about that. Chris Barron, as you well know, with AgView Solutions, that's one of his biggies. And I make jokes about it. That there are farmers that would just about go out and and do something bad to one of their appendages to avoid paying taxes. And it's like, what in the hell's wrong with you? But is that the big one?
I don't know if I would put them in necessarily a certain order. Every business in America, perhaps besides Tesla, it seems, has to make money. Right?
Amazon before it. Remember, Amazon was unprofitable for like a decade until they became, now they are the evil empire. But yeah, they were profitless for 10 years.
But Amazon obviously wasn't worth what they were a decade ago either. Right. Every business has to make money to achieve their long-term goals, whether it's growth, succession planning, you name it. Too many times the thought of here's probably the best answer for you, Damian. They make it too emotional. They get married to the money they spend and the grain that they have in the bin. Mm-hmm. It's too emotional, an emotional tie. I can't let it go because what if this happens?
Mm-hmm. A feel-good story or a bad story. You've been around this for a while, and you made it about your business, but you see a lot of stuff. You got a story for me that in the last year has struck you that you're like, oh wow, this is something that I'd like to tell other people.
Well, maybe the feel-good piece is just seeing more and more farmers adapt to the idea of locking in profits whenever they're available, because the speed of the market movement last summer would have drove somebody absolutely nuts. And there was windows of times, 3 different times, if not 4 different times that, our client base was outpacing probably the average producer to the tune of several $100s an acre. Mm-hmm. And the result of that was being able to take a solid balance sheet or financial statement to their operator or to their banker to jump on opportunities that were in front of them. The feel good, maybe the best feel good, Damian, out of the last 12 months is seeing the growth, good land acquisitions that multiple clients had the opportunity to take on in the last 12 months. Mm-hmm. And until the big market move up, I think the majority of American ag producers kind of get a gut-wrenching feeling of going out and buying additional farm ground. So I don't know if that necessarily fits the good side. The bad side is it's still human. Human emotion catches up to you. Oh, I wish I would have done X, Y, Z. And there's no way of outguessing the last 3 years of this market, from trade war to the derecho to, obviously COVID, to now Russia-Ukraine tension, all these pieces intertwined. The bad side is watching somebody beat themselves up about the high to low moves that take place over and over again. But there's always something good to come out of the bad. There's an opportunity to learn and then build on those good opportunities. And I got a bad one for you, a good bad one. So I told you, with a couple different co-ops and banks and insurance agencies throughout the US. This is probably some of the coffee shop folks that maybe get on our nerves of adapt to the idea of a business plan and a strategy and completely throw egg on the face of the individual that was presenting that strategy. I have the luxury of having a solid enough relationship with the producers that we work with, that it doesn't get thrown back at me like, you dumbass, what are you doing? So on and so on. Seeing a wave of producers within different co-op industries come back at an individual that presented an idea, but ultimately that business, the farmer, made the decision. The anger that comes out of the ag industry from being wrong because the market went higher drives me nuts. But you don't hear a damn thing about it when you protect
them on the downside. Yeah. So when you protect them with profitable solvency from the downside, they don't say, "Oh my God, you sure saved my bacon." But then they say, "Hey, we missed $2 over here." And you say, "But also you told me that you were going to lock in." And that's probably the same thing. If it's your stock advisor, it's about anybody.
I mean, it's happening right here now, Damian, with what the market's doing. You got producers bent out of shape about being 5-10% sold on a soybean crop at $12 or $13.
Yeah.
I mean, get a grip.
So we talked a lot about markets, talked about what you do. Last thought on this. Ag tends to be countercyclical. Sometimes ag is predictive. I've been around this just a couple years longer than you, although you've got your finger on the pulse of the numbers a bit more than I do. So between my a bit more history and you're a bit more finger on the pulse of the numbers, is this just a situation where 30% run up in land values, 20 to 30% run up in commodity prices? And of course, I'm talking corn, soybeans, and wheat. I think a little bit on the cattle. I can't speak for everything. Milk's up certainly lapped 30%, but things are up in general. I think tree fruits are not, and milk is up, but not certainly by that number. But in general, things are up, right? Land, of course, being the biggie. Is this predictive of where things are going everywhere? And all of a sudden, because gas is up, my residence in Arizona is up that much. I mean, is this just staying even? Is it going to fall out of ag more than the other sectors, from gas to housing to other things? What's your thought?
Obviously, it's all a gut opinion, Damian.
It's all conjecture, isn't it? It's all conjecture, and you can argue it any way. I could argue I could tell you why everything's going to fall to shit, and I can also tell you why it's going to stay this way or improve. What's your thought?
I'm obviously not an economist. The stimulus money that has been pushed into the U.S. market for the last couple of years will eventually hurt us. I don't know if it's this year. I don't know if it's next year. But it seems like the Fed at this moment is scared of their own shadow. They're perhaps more scared of recession than inflation. But recent CPI numbers is just putting the crunch to the median household income and below, maybe even above median household income.
Yeah.
That just can't keep up that way. And unfortunately, relating that back to agriculture, the end product is arguably what's going to feel the most pain first, whenever that does happen. Now, in addition, a huge component of the big price moves that we've seen in land and anything else agriculture related is tied back to speculative money that's chasing a return. And, at the conference that we were at in January, Joe Vakovic laid it out very, very well. that ag is in commodities it's the highest risk return investment that any money can buy. Mm-hmm. The idea of staying here and creating a new plateau, I don't agree with that. I don't even know if we have to go back to prices that we've seen in agriculture from 2014 to 18, perhaps. But prices that we would have drooled all over in those years is probably a realistic return at some point, but that's going to be a substantial loss for the farm, given what's happened in land prices and input prices. I just think that, no, it's not a new plateau. No, I don't think it's predictive. No, I don't think it's indicative. I think you have an entire amount of money driven by computers and nowhere else to go to get a return. But as soon as something changes there and too much pain is put on that money, it's going elsewhere, and it's not going to be in the ag space.
Yeah,
who wants to own land at $20,000 and it costs you 8% to buy it, 8% to borrow the money to buy it? That's not going to happen.
No, it's not. And you said something really interesting there. And this is what, if you are business minded, financial minded, and you have an understanding of history, when money starts getting punished, it moves. And remember, it's people read too much into this and they get the emotional part of it. Man, it's the investment community, it moves. That money moves. And when it becomes prohibitive, and it may, like you said, on interest rates or on low returns, it will move to another place. The one thing that is boding well for everything is that there's just boatloads of capital sitting around right now. A session I sat through, we got like venture capital money is like 4 times what it was just 2 years ago. And that's the kind of money that throws into and moves things. We talk about the funds and things like this. And so I think there's a lot of money floating around out there. It's just it's made things frothy and almost like it keeps getting frothier because it's so frothy. Mm-hmm. So any other last thoughts before we go? We took a little longer than I wanted to, but dear listener, this is Jarod Creed. Remember, I met him because he was at a conference that I spoke at, but also I met him because he works with Kelly Garrett, and Kelly is one of the founding members of Extreme Ag. I want to encourage you, if you want to see what's happening on some of the more forward-minded, successfully run business and production farms in America, the guys at Extreme Ag, and you can check it out at extremeag.farm. We're doing product trials. I'm recording content about business, about management issues, about new methodologies that they're employing on their farming operations that you can then apply to yours. And even if you're not a farmer, you should probably see what we're doing over there because it's some really cool stuff. Check out extremeag.farm. If you want to find Jarod Creed, the guy that's on this episode right now, Jarod, where do they find you?
Easy as just be a phone call, old fashioned, area code 402-680-1744. It's
JC, as in Jarod Creed, Marketing Services out of Hudson, Iowa. And so you can find him. And if you want to find him, you can always just email me because you know where to find me. That's at DamianMason.com. Until next time, Jarod, thanks for being here, my friend.
Thank you, Damian. I really appreciate it.
Bet. Till next time, it's the Business of Agriculture.
This episode of The Business of Agriculture was brought to you by Land Trust. Landowners, just like you, are increasing profitability by adding recreation to their portfolio of land use. Millions of recreators actively seek wide-open spaces for birdwatching, photography, hunting, fishing, horseback riding, and many other farm and ranch activities. Owners of farm and ranch properties are partnering with Recreation Access Network Land Trust. Land Trust is an online platform connecting recreators with landowners for outdoor experiences on their land to increase profitability. Visit landtrust.com/BOA, as in Business of Agriculture, to learn more. That's landtrust.com/BOA.